Oh, good morning, or I'm going to try this one more time. It's my third attempt at StreamYard this morning. I'll re-record it in a formal studio if I have to. Talking about a new study that came from the Netherlands for 16-year-old males who received, who got COVID, and one passed away. So they compared their genetic signatures and looking at, we got to the point where here's the demographics. One family had 2 boys and a girl, and another family had 2 boys. These 2 boys survived. This boy survived. This girl didn't get it, and this boy passed away from COVID-19. So what did they find? We were talking about how during the day, calcium is released from a healthy oxygenated mitochondria, and manganese is kept inside. And we're going to look at that later because, if all the manganese is going out, calcium and manganese share the same transport channel. So either calcium is going out or manganese is going out, apparently. And the way they get manganese into, as in mangaphotopure, they target calcium receptors to get manganese into the brain for contrasting. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. And they both have the same valence, +2, I believe. And so when we're sleeping, especially in REM sleep, the lowest oxygen period of the day, clean up, mop up, restructuring, street sweeping, garbage disposal, killing off. When we're sick, we rest. And we're killing stuff. We're killing off, mopping up, cleaning out, phagocytosis, endocytosis, and all sorts of things that are happening that are protecting us, restructuring, and then our DNA can unpack during the day, healthy oxygenated day, and then if something, a hurricane happens, mitochondria will carve and cleave and let's create this survival pathway and everything else can fall away. So I was up at the Hamptons this week. I mean, easy peasy. No threats. Everything was like just kind of perfectly groomed and feng shuied all over the place. Everything was delicious. Nothing was, we were thinking, we weren't filtering out any excess chemicals or anything in the food. It was pretty sweet. This is the agrarian lifestyle that Thomas Jefferson talked about with Hamilton. Let's go agrarian, Jefferson says. Hamilton says, no, let's go industrial. And the industry won. And here we are with COVID. Now, had the agrarian won, God knows what we would have. We'd have a lot more nature, a lot more things, maybe more killer hornet, bees, whatever. Who knows? But, there are consequences by our choices. Our choices have consequences throughout our lives. We know that. As we mature, that becomes pretty clear. Impulsive choices have consequences. All right. So what they found, let's get into a different color, is our RNA, and the difference between the RNA between these young men was at the 3-unit RNA that goes into the nucleolus. The 5-liter RNA did not seem to be affected, although it makes me wonder if this 5-liter goes into our mitochondria to reproduce, something's going to affect it. We'll find a difference somewhere where it is affected. I would imagine. I'm likely, and it probably has to do with our metals: manganese level, calcium level, copper level, iron level, other things. Those are the basics. And so this a residual element that was found here, a pivotal RNA element found before this, within this arena, and if this was not found if this was in the arena, they survived. And I think the girl had it too. But if it was outside this arena, then the virus could come in and cleave it so that the nucleolus produced this 3-dimer viral RNA. The COVID reproduced, and the person succumbed to the disease. So that's a very interesting piece of science that just came out. I'm sorry, I spilled something on my computer this weekend. It's giving me a sheen. All right, I'll see what I can do about that. I have to get another one. It'll be my 19th computer, believe it or not. Okay, so what does this mean? This 5-unit RNA is made in the mitochondria, and it's not really made. It doesn't happen in a strong mitochondria. It doesn't happen in a mitochondria that has calcium going out during the day like it should. Athletes, healthy, young people who are very active and engaged with a DNA that's unpacking each and every day in an oxygenated environment with lungs that are, being at least signaled to take in more oxygen. No, it's happening in mitochondria that are mutated. And when a mitochondria mutates, it's in a low oxygen, respiratory disease, glycal obese, diabetes. The glucose signaling is all messed up. And from what I can tell, our energy is primarily, the corn oil in the car, the glucose. A little bit of glucose. We can live 5 weeks without food. These people who are getting it, sometimes are eating every 5 minutes, every 5 seconds, some of them. When you're obese like that, you're eating all day, every day. When you're in the, 30 plus BMI, that's a lot of eating and not too much moving around. Okay, so when a mitochondria mutates, what does it do? It gets all misshapen. It gets all weird looking, like a crescent shape, or just weird. And the calcium builds up because it's not releasing calcium. It's releasing manganese. Why does it release manganese? To split oxygen out of water and scavenge for oxygen, while it, thinks, oh my gosh, I'm carrying around a huge whale-like, hippopotamus-like, large animal. And that takes a lot of energy. It takes a different kind of energy too. Energy and, I don't know. Okay, so that's that study. It's a very interesting study, but that's not really what I wanted to talk about today. I just wanted to go back to the lungs a bit, and just try to understand a little bit more about the how and why of oxygenation. So someone who's active and busy, we have nice lungs. Here's our brain. We've got a wonderful brain up here, right? And it does a lot of it. This is our brain. Oh, it just looks, here's our eyeballs. There we go. Hi. And then when the brain develops, it comes down and makes the mouth. And this is where a lot of our We have the lacrimal glands, we have the salivatory glands, we have the endocrine glands, and in the brain is this choroid plexus that delivers the lot of nutrients. This is our cerebellum. Gee, kind of looking through. I know you've seen worse. And then there's a pituitary gland that women, la, 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 when you sing, that thing is being stimulated with resonance. You can feel the resonance right there. That would really get it a little more. So you can stimulate it. You can focal stimulate this anterior pituitary that is energizing and immune boosting. So when you energize and you're doing stuff, you want to take an immunity with you. And the brain does that for you. So, and what is involved in that immunity, in that immune response? Manganese. Not magnesium, manganese. So, all right. And so it's a balancing act, right? Left is right, left is right. Right brain is left. We oxygenate when we're awake. When we're asleep, it's the lowest oxygen. We've got those a little mixed up. We think, oh, we've got this involuntary breathing. We really need a breath. We'll take it. Oh, yeah. That's what doctors call primoxia. Too late. Too late. That's called gasping for breath. That's gasping for breath. Ugh, I don't even like demonstrating that. What we want to do is proxia. Oh, yes, I'm awake. Before I even start to move, I know my brain's going to be using oxygen to make it happen well, to start building fearless, flawless, flowful networks. Flow we want. That's pro-oxygen. We know that oxygen is fueling the tank. No more corn oil, we say. The glycolytic stuff goes in the oil thing. The glycolytic just kind of keeps it kind of, yeah, we don't want to starve ourselves. No, we want to fuel ourselves. Fuel it. The fuel is oxygen, and the what do you call it? The radiator is hydration, right? We need a radiator full of fluid to keep us going, and the glucose is the oil in the car. Lasts a long time, and we don't need a lot of it. Just like a car. Interesting, nice analogy, I think. My good friend and colleague and entrepreneur Ray Hornblower, also a singer, he has developed a fuel that takes on that releases, oh my gosh, oxygen as a byproduct of the fueling of the machine. It's very interesting and probable and possible, and we need to do that. Now's the best time to do that, to invest in something like that. The byproduct, it splits water. The byproduct is oxygen and water, similar to what the mitochondria do, which is all good, all good. Okay, so where I was going with this, have I kept you in suspense yet? Again, is that the lungs, here we are, all big, strong guys, whatever. There's our arms. I'm not a very good artist today, am I? Got the lungs. It's more of a singer's lung. So manganese, let me finish up that manganese, when we administer manganese, as in mangafodipir, it goes to our choroid plexus, which is the internal blood supply for the brain and neurogenesis. and all the good stuff that creates new brain cells and kind of feeds. It's kind of the grocery store or the pharmacy for the brain. The anterior pituitary, which is immune and activation, part of the pituitary, and the endocrine glands. At the lacrimal, the sublingual, and the submandibular, the ones that the doctors look for. Speaking of which, the plague they found a case of the plague out in California. 2020 just never stops, right? I think the bovine plague. Okay. So anyway, okay. So this is manganese. Manganese, right? Comes in and keeps all these things pumping with immunity. Starting with the choroid plexus, the essential. And this is, I hope we can try this, Dr. Stevens and Company. Dear Dr. Stevens and Company. I so admire Dr. Stevens. Mangafodipir. Mangafodipir has manganese in the middle of it, and it's blockaded by all this escort like you wouldn't believe. Manganese needs a big escort. Too much of it, man, street sweeper. In smaller quantities, COVID-19 picks up 2 of them and goes to that RNA we were just talking about and goes clip, clip. It needs only 2. So what am I trying? Where am I going with this? Got you in suspense, don't I? So the lungs go way up here, right? Let's see. And then they're kind of segmented over here, but they go way up into our shoulder areas, right? Way up there. When the kids say, take a breath, that's what they do. They puff into this little area. This is our evolved area. Great. What has evolved? Our frontal cortex, our ability to be afraid of anything. Hail. No, nothing to worry about here. Okay, I could be in here all day and not a thing. Okay, so, but if someone says, you're not breathing enough and you're going to die, that's exactly what we do. We don't get a big breath. We get a little breath. We get a little breath in this evolved pocket that is this area. We see more and more. We realize we're connecting more and more. Our frontal lobe is giving us, we are evolving here. We are far from evolved as a populace. In fact, we're getting more bits and bytes. We have smaller attention times than ever, probably. Talk about attention. We used to sit on a rock and just think, oh gosh, where's my dinner? Am I dinner? Am I someone's dinner? That's attention. So, and there's a whole sympathetic nervous system that plays into this whole give and take of self-actualization. So we want to understand that, possibly formulate that, and work with that. And part of that is staying oxygenated. So this is kind of a fear oxygen. This is kind of a fear area because it's new. This is new. And it's directly connected to the amygdala. Oh my gosh, I'm afraid. My shoulders are up. It lifts just the, northeast upper cap of our breathing. Remember we talked about loose neck, long neck, loose shoulders, loose jaw. Try taking that breath with those things, with the, deactivate that amygdala. And it goes into your upper back, which is another part of our evolutionary trajectory, which we have kind of conquered. This is all farming, getting up, farming around. All right, nothing's going to hurt us. We're in control. We've managed this pretty well. And the other part, which is, on our back breath, to take a good back breath, no tension. Riding that bike, right? Being on all fours. That is a deep, primal, evolutionary breath. Okay, so, all right. So people who are getting COVID are doing a lot of their breathing up here. These are the people who are obese. And this is just sunk in with overweightness. And people with respiratory, the triangulated breathers. So this is the only place that oxygen is getting in. It's limited, very limited. So we have oxygen here. And this circle's a little big for what's really going on. In fact, it's kind of down here. This very small area where we're actually breathing, where we're actually getting oxygen in. Let's get a little more realistic here. This little pocket of breath. And this is the main lecture for today. Here are your lungs. Here's the pocket of breath. And it's really in the front too. We're trying to push it in that back area, that surface area in the back. And the prone position will enable some of that, to spread out a little more. Because if our shoulders are back, so there's an evolution, a postural. We need to look at the physiology of breathing as per our postural integrity and our flexibility and our understanding. So they find that the prone, that's a mechanical thing to put someone on their tummy, and the shoulders are a little more out of the way. Because when you're standing upright, like we're supposed to be, worse yet hunched over, the shoulders are back, and you can't get into those lungs. You can't broaden those lungs in the back. And you are crushed down on these lower ones where where the big bang is. This is where the bulk of oxygen can come in. That's over half of the oxygen capacity is in these lower lungs, right? These lower lungs. I look at the lungs as, I try to talk about it in 2 cups. Anybody cook? Got 2 cups of flour. You put in 1.25 cups right here, 1 1/4 cup. That's over half of the lung capacities here. When you move up into that upper back area that has the prone area, you're adding another maybe, 2/3 of a cup. Right? And when you're only doing it in here, because this is such new territory, and we're really not aware of the power of our lungs, you're looking at maybe, 1/3 to 1/2 cup, So, it's a little 2+ cups, right, to really maximize it. So what's happening in COVID-19? Let's go back to COVID-19. All right, we had a lot of fun up here with the brain. Let's go back. We're just at the lungs here now again. So let's draw these lungs. They go all the way up to the shoulders, and they make room for the heart here. Got a little lovely heart in the middle. Boom, 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 boom. And our lungs, yeah, nice and big. Bigger on the bottom, right? So COVID is a glycoprotein, double membrane, glycoprotein, doesn't like sunshine, doesn't like copper. Flies through the air with the greatest of ease. And these are glucose protein, what I call sugar fat stuff. And these double membrane vesicles, and they have their viral RNA, which is kind of goes in and pilfers, destroys our body. So what's it coming into? It's coming into a person, obese, respiratory illnesses, older. The older we get, the more we sink down on those lungs. We're not breathing deeply. We're not out there foraging for food or farming or, we have clamped down on these areas. We don't particularly use these without the cardiovascular exercising. These areas are less and less used. So what happens to the mitochondria in the lungs? They keep the calcium in, they quit working, and they shoot out the manganese, right? And more cells are dead anyway, because the manganese can only save so much, can't save it all, it has its limitations. Otherwise, like in ischemia, you have ischemia or a stroke or a concussion, and there's all this blood, and so you get, what's on the perimeter? Manganese. And then you have more blood, and what's on the perimeter? Manganese. And then you have more bleeding because you don't stop the bleeding with cooling, focal cooling. You have manganese. But then this is dead. The manganese tries to save it, but it can't save it. You need to stop the bleeding to really save it. But manganese tries to save it, and it just keeps kicking out. So and this is also not just in inflammation and ischemia and edema, but it's also in low oxygen. You're going to have this happening, that the mitochondria during hypoxia, chronic progressive allostatic load, all the risk factors that cause disease are hypoxic. Most, if not all. 2019 Nobel Prize, Greg Semenza and company. Hypoxia causes all disease. Cancer, right up the line. And manganese is involved. So what do you got down here? Manganese. A lot of it? No, as much as has survived for the latest bout. Just not a lot. And so what does the virus do? It passes by the oxygen and comes in and picks in the middle of this virus. What's in the middle of this virus? 1 manganese, 2 manganese. Split the 3 and the 5. 1 manganese split, 2 manganese split. It gets just enough manganese from what's left down here in these comorbid conditions to do its own self-actualization. Now, what happens if there is not, what happens in an athlete? What happens in an athlete? An athlete, man, is breathing all the way over, using all these lungs all the time. Using lungs all the time. So this is in good shape. Oxygen gets all the way down here all the time. In young children, oxygen all the time. Oxygen all the time. So what happens when the virus sweeps down here? The mitochondria kick out tons of manganese. They have lots of it left. I mean, it's going, first of all, they're coming into a calcium environment because calcium is working. Because there's oxygen, you get calcium. And so if there is a virus, manganese says, boom, boom, this too much manganese, a lot of manganese, in a oxygenated calcium, a virus comes and manganese goes, bye, boom, boom, we kill you. You don't stand a chance. So too much manganese will kill this thing. Now you could say, okay, well, there's too much manganese down in the area. No, this disease model is progressive. And I believe there's science out there that even if they're pumping oxygen into it, the mitochondria are so compromised already, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. In fact, the more oxygen they pump in, the mitochondria are going to try to fight the COVID. They're going to try to fight it, and they're going to kick out the last gasps of manganese to do that. At which point, all they're doing is feeding these little 2 nuggets that they need for the virus to replicate. So you pump oxygen in, last gasp, and the virus gets even stronger because it uses the manganese to cleave our RNA and pairs with it. Okay, did you follow that? So we need to look at, our lung health, and that is an oxygen health, pro-oxic, ultra-oxic. I did a thing on oxic. So primoxia is the top tier in modern medicine. Primoxia is as high as it goes, from what I've seen. And in my study of oxygenation, I have coined proxia, ultroxia, meaning understanding that we enable an oxygen gradient and just continue to go at it, see what happens then, we start to understand that the brain does a lot of this for us. And then we have optoxia, where the brain's doing it for us. And that's where I'm going. And that's how I kayaked upstream on a raging river, a quarter of a mile, just knowing where I turned into a turbine. And who knows what's beyond that. So let's look at what science has to date. They have anoxia. That's no oxygen. 0 oxygen equals bada bada boom, cancer. That's how they make it. Anoxia leads directly to a cell becoming cancerous, at which point it doesn't need manganese. It just sucks the life out of us through oxygenation. Anoxia was origins of life, creates these crazy mutations, and then they just suck in oxygen after it mutates. That's the primary source of fuel. It doesn't need mitochondria. This is like pre-mitochondria, it seems. Cancer seems like a pre-mitochondria blah blurb. It'd be interesting to treat cancer with iron, manganese, and gallionella type ingredients. Wouldn't it now? Because if this is a pre-mitochondria cell, can we introduce a mitochondria into it and at least reincorporate it into our working system so that it doesn't suck all the oxygen out of every system? Okay, and then there's hypoxia, which is what we're finding in COVID-19. Happy hypoxics, people who are running around doing stuff, don't even realize they're barely breathing. That could be more of us than we think. I know I do it sometimes. I have to consciously do it, or go up into the Hamptons and go to the beach where, my body does it for me. Oh, wow. That's a crazy great breeze. Oh, look at that. Nothing's stopping me, and the environment is triggering me to breathe. That is basically a normoxia. That means there's nothing stopping me from breathing. Sitting around watching TV is kind of normoxia. It's kind of in between. But then cooking, where you've got stimulus and smelling and activity, and you're breathing and smelling, then you're getting more oxygen. And that's kind of there's a hypernormoxia and a hyponormoxia, really, to look at it that way. And then scientists talk about primoxia, having sex, exercise, meditation, holding it in. You're bumping up your oxygen levels systematically. Primoxia, and there's different levels of that too. It's where there's a low where you're desperate, either in sex. You've done the overactivity, and now you're trying to get rid of the carbon dioxide so you can go back to normoxia. Or you're going into things like yoga and or meditation, where you're just bolstering. It takes 2-3 seconds to get the oxygen in and delivered. You're establishing an oxygen gradient. And so there are 2 levels of primoxia, 2 levels of normoxia, differing levels of hypoxia. And, cancer, you get it started with no oxygen, and then, after a while, it starts sucking all the oxygen out of your life because it vascularizes at a certain point. We see that in the lungs of of COVID-19. First it goes in and it's found this anoxic area and picks up the manganese to start reproducing. And then that's a hypoxic area. And then if that are anoxic, because this area is just not used in these lungs, the cells are like hanging in there like dying plants. And after this is successful, then what happens? Copper is involved with this vascularization. It vascularizes. We see these blood, what do they call it? I forget the name of it offhand, I'm sorry. But it vascularizes. It tries to vascularize. That's what cancer does. Okay, so this is where we are to date. This is where we are today, 2020, without these distinctions. Just primoxia, normoxia, hypoxia, anoxia. No distinctions here. Those distinctions are my distinctions, but we need to start looking at those distinctions. And we need to go, this is our industrialized mutation. Let's call it a mutation. We have industrialized we have mutated in our industrialized world. We're stressed. We loaf around, don't do anything, hang out and wait for the next station to change on the channel. do a little cooking, which bumps us up, etc. And then the prime oxy, go to the gym. We know 20 minutes, 3 times a week. That's about it. That's our formula. Not enough. Not enough to fight COVID-19. Well, stand to be corrected. If it's not COVID-19, it's the next one. So we need to go pro-oxic. What does that mean? Pro-oxia. That means when I wake up in the morning, I know that oxygen is my fuel. And before I dash out of bed, jump in the shower, start micromanaging my life, very important. Now, if you have a minute to wait and stretch and no rush, the alarm's not jerking you out of bed, you do stretch. If you have a partner that, in a loving relationship, you can cuddle and riff-raff and laugh. Take a couple minutes to wake up that way. Healthy. That's pro-oxic. But pro-oxia to me is understanding that during the day, that is our time to consciously breathe. Pro-oxia means conscious breath, right? Conscious breath. Understanding that it's not just showing up for meditation. It's showing up for every moment of our waking state. Long neck, loose shoulders, loose jaw. What's all that matter, what really happens is what happens on our next breath. When we oxygenate, we signal areas of the brain to go ahead. All right, burn off, oxygen's coming. I'm going to pick something up. Go ahead, burn it off, brain. I already picked it up, and that's where the oxygen goes. Depolarization signals for repolarization, right? Depolarization signals for repolarization. What happens during depolarization? Manganese levels go down. No, manganese levels, the manganese signals for the replenishment. When we deoxygenate, manganese says, oops, we're out of oxygen. That's this manga photopere. Oh my gosh, don't worry about the counterintuitivity of this. Because it's there. You're going to say, but, no. When we oxygenate, we have already signaled that it's coming. And if we have so that's what that does. That's pro-oxia. So we consciously breathe. And we breathe. Before I get up, boom, right? I've signaled for getting up. And getting up is not like, if I don't do it, I'm like, okay, time to get up. Ouch, my back. Oh, my hips. Oh, my butt. Oh, I'm so heavy. No. There's grace and form and control and inhibition. The cerebellum gets fueled as well. It's a beautiful thing. Oh, gosh, I'm going up to 50 minutes. Okay, folks, hang in there. It's all good. So pro-oxia, and then we jump right up to ultroxia. What does that mean? That's when we start talking about an oxygen gradient. That is the oxygen gradient. Right? And there's one more I have. Maybe more coming. Who knows? Hey, once we understand that we are oxygen fueled, sky's the limit. It really is. It truly is. So ultroxy is understanding that, all right, man, I am going to go on that paddleboard. I've never been on one. And I'm going down the Shenandoah River 7 miles. Wow. Over currents and ripples and all that stuff. Well, I'm a good swimmer. But, what is this thing? What is this thing? Oh, I'm going to go on that paddleboard. That's one. I'm going to hold that paddle and go down, be standing on that paddleboard for the most of the time, I guess. That's two. Three. Oh, he said, I could also get on my knees if I had to, if the currents got bubbly and I didn't want to, don't want to fall off. That's 3 deep breaths. 4. I'm looking at the river. There it is, a sunny day. It should be beautiful. What's the worst that can happen? Not much. I can always stand up in the river. There are a bunch of people around to help me. 4, 5. I take 10 deep held breaths before I get on that paddleboard. 6. Of course, there's no paddleboard here, but I'll pretend I'm going to get on it. 7. Oh my gosh, I've never been on this paddleboard. I've got my vest on. I'm ready to go. My arms are ready to hold the paddle. 7. My legs are pretty strong. My knees are good. It's foam based. It should be comfortable enough to get on. 9. Oh my gosh, here we go. I'm locked and loaded, helmet on, paddle in hand. 10, there's the board. It's sitting in the water. I'm beside it. It's time to get on the paddle board. And now I go back to proxia. All that matters is what I do on next breath. I've established an oxygen gradient here. Great. Proxia. All right, time to get on. Whoa. But I know I've got an oxygen gradient. And what does that tell me? That all parts of my brain are working. Vestibular, geographic, axis, oasis. Sunshine's free energy too. The vestibular, all of these issues of balance and staying on the damn thing are oxygenated because I have signaled those specific areas in oxygenating this specific task. Very different from 10 breaths to go bike riding, rollerblading, rock climbing. Very different. I have oxygenated this task with 10 deep held breaths, and I get on and I go, woo! And then I very quickly settle. And I'm okay. Whoa, I think I'm having fun already. I haven't started paddling yet. And I start paddling. Wow, that paddle takes me right there. And paddle on the right side, it takes me I'm going, wow, wow, wow. And that happened for about the first 3 miles. Okay. But I could keep breathing. I stay proxic as I work this paddleboard. I get on the paddleboard with an oxygen gradient. Check. I stay on the paddleboard with proxia and trying to maintain that oxygen gradient while I'm like, what the heck is this thing? And I try standing up and whoa. But then after a while, my subconscious brain, it's like learning to ride a bike, learning to figure skate, learning to rollerblade, learning to play tennis, learning to play golf, learning to play basketball, anything. The brain will learn it for you. Why does it look so easy? It is easy. Because we've shown up at the bus stop enough, breathed enough, oxygenated enough to enable the brain to figure it out for us. And the cerebellum is a big part of that. That's why it's so tight and compact. It used to be a lot bigger. In the Cro-Magnon and a million years ago. It's gotten smaller as we've learned how to farm and be smart, but we have to give it oxygen. Okay, so what's next? I have 58 seconds. We have oxia. That is turbine. That's where I've gone down that stream on that. I've gotten to the 4, 5, 6 mile point, and I'm like, okay, great. I'm pretty much staying in the straight line. And then in the 7th mile, I called it my inner Pocahontas. I'm just looking at where I'm going. And this paddle is keeping me in an absolute straight line, and I'm only paddling on one side. I'm only paddling on one side, and I'm going smooth as a dice roll. and the brain has figured out all the paddling, all the vestibular. And when I get on the bus to go back to the main camp, people saying, wow, you really look like you knew what you were doing on that thing. Oxygenation. And I'll leave you with that. Thank you for listening. It's been a 50-minute broadcast this morning. Bless you all. And thanks for joining me. Have a great, great day. Oxygenate. Go pro. Cheers.